This is the video on Lesson 5-3, Solving Multiple Steps Inequalities. I have two problems here. Number 1, solve 11y is greater than 33. And number 2, solve negative 11y minus 13 is greater than 42. Please spend this time to spot the difference. What do you notice is different between number 1 and number 2? Please spend the next 2 to 3 minutes doing that. You can pause the video if you need to. What you should notice is that there are more numbers and terms in number 2. There is that minus 13 that is extra that is in number 2 that isn't in number 1. So, you should notice that you would have to do more steps to solve for y for number 2 because there are more terms to deal with. When we have more than one term or more than one thing that we have to move, we call this a solving multiple steps of inequalities because there are multiple steps that we need to take to solve for our variable or to get that variable alone. Now, before we do that, I would like you to remember all your different properties of your inequalities before we move forward. The first one is the additional property of inequality is when you add. Okay. The subtraction property of inequality, this is when you subtract to get x alone. Then there's the multiplication property of inequality, right? That when you multiply to each side, so you could get, because that is the inverse property of division. And also when you divide both sides of the inequality by a number, because division is the inverse property of multiplication. Remember to change the inequality, the direction of the inequality when you multiply or divide by negative value. So in this case, we see that it is a greater than symbol here, but when we multiply both sides by -2, we have to change the direction of the inequality. Next, same thing for the division property of inequality. When we divide by a negative number, we have to change the direction of the inequality. Do you see in green here? Originally, it was a less than symbol. Originally, it is a greater than symbol. Now it became a less than symbol. Okay? We change the direction of the inequality when we multiply or divide by a negative value. Alright, so let's do example 2. Inequality involving a negative coefficient. Okay, please spend this time to attempt this problem, and I will guide over this problem. My first step is always to write the original equation. Negative 11y minus 13 is greater than 42. You want to divide both sides by, you want to add 13 to both sides. That's how you get 55. There's a step missing here. Okay. Afterwards, you want to divide by negative 11 to both sides. Okay, that's how they got that 55 right here. It's because they add 13 to both sides first. Okay. Then they divide both sides by negative 11. Remember, when you divide by a negative term, you have to reverse the inequality or change the direction of the inequality. So you get y is less than -5 after you simplified. Okay, so when you write this in the solution set format, which you would say y is less than -5. So any value that would work. So what I would like you to do is now to attempt 2a and 2b. Solve each inequality. Notice that these have more terms than normal, therefore they're going to require multiple steps to solve. So please pause the video now and attempt the problem. To A, here are the solutions. 2a, this is my original equation. 23 is greater than 10 minus 2w. You want to subtract 10 to both sides. because you're trying to get the variable alone. You're trying to solve for the variable. So I subtract 10 first. Then I simplify. So 23 minus 10 is 13 on the left hand side. On the right hand side, I have a subtract 2w. You want to divide negative 2 to both sides because I'm trying to get w alone. In the process of dividing negative 2 to both sides, I have to change the direction of the inequality. So originally it was a greater than or equal to symbol. Now it is a less than and equal to symbol. After you simplify, it is negative 13 over 2, which is less than or equal to w. Okay. In my solution set, we say w is greater than or equal to negative 13 over 2. Okay. I just wrote this answer in the set notation. 2b, 43 is greater than negative 4y plus 11. That is my original equation. I have to subtract 11 to both sides. 43 minus 11 is 20 on the left hand side. On the right hand side, I am left with negative subtract 4w or negative 4w. You want to divide negative 4 to both sides because you're trying to get the w alone. In the process of dividing negative 4 to both sides, you have to change the direction of the inequality. Originally, before, you see it was a greater than symbol. Now it is a less than symbol. The reason I changed the direction of the inequality, it is because I divided by a negative value. So, let's simplify. 20 divided by negative 4 is a negative 5. On my right hand side, negative 4 divided by negative 4 is just a w. So in my set notation, I would say w is greater than negative 5. Example 3. I want you to write and solve an inequality. So the problem says instructions say define a variable, write an inequality, and solve the problem. The problem reads 5 minus 6 times a number is more than 4 times the number plus 45. The first thing I need to do is define the variable. So I'm going to let the letter n be the number. So the first part of the sentence is 5. So I wrote 5. Minus is the subtract symbol. 6 times a number is 6 times n. 6 times, the times is an indicator of a product or a multiplication. Is more than is the greater than symbol. 4 times a number, again times is referred to multiplication, so it's 4 times n. Plus is the addition symbol. 45 is just the number 45. So when we put this in the inequality, it becomes 5 minus 6n is greater than 4n plus 45. Okay? How you subtract 4n to both sides, that's how you get 5 minus 10n is greater than 45. They just did an extra step from the original equation to this step. They subtracted 4n to each side, then simplified. Then you want to subtract 5 to both sides. So once you subtract 5 to both sides, on the left hand side you get a negative 10n. On the right hand side you get a 40. Divide negative 10 to both sides, and in the process of dividing by a negative value, you have to reverse the inequality. So it becomes a less than symbol. So now the answer is n is less than negative 4. In your set builder notation, in your solution set, you would say n is less than negative 4. That would be your solution set for this problem. Next, I would like you to do the guided practice number 3. 2 more than half a number is greater than 27. Please pause the video now and attempt to do the problem. Here's my solution. The first thing that I need to do is to define the variable. So let x be the number. So I'm going to break down each part into a number or into a variable, something I can write. So the number 2 is written as 2. More than is just the addition symbol. Half of a number is 1/2 x. Greater than is the greater than symbol. and 27 is the number 27. Running this in the original inequality, it's 2 plus 1 half x is greater than 27. I have to subtract 2 to both sides. After I simplified, I get 1 half x is greater than 25. I have to multiply 2 to both sides because that is the inverse property of divide by 2. So after I multiply by 2 to both sides, I get x on the left hand side, which is greater than 50. Notice I do not, let me repeat, I do not flip the inequality because this time I just multiplied by a positive 2. Okay? You only flip the inequality when you're multiplying or dividing by negative value. So here, x is greater than 50. So my solution set is x. X is greater than 50. Next, I would like you to, let's review the distributive property. So if I have 4 parentheses 3t minus 5 close the parentheses, which is my original expression, let's do the distributive property. The distributive property is a way for you to get rid of the parentheses by distributing that term on the inside. So do you see how 4 is distributed to each term inside the parentheses? So 4 is going to be multiplied to 3t. Then 4 is going to be multiplied to negative 5. So after I simplify, I would say that after I use the distributive property, it simplifies into negative 12t minus 20. 4 times 3t is 12t. Oh, this should be a positive 12. That should not be a negative. This should be a positive, okay? 12t minus 20. Okay, that should be a positive 12t. Next, let's do this problem. It says solve this inequality, then graph the solution on the number line. Please pause the video if you would like to attempt this problem. The first step is always to rewrite the original inequality. Distribute the terms in. So do you see how 4 times 3t becomes 12t? 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. This, the left-hand side, was done on the previous slide. Combine like terms, so the negative 20 here plus 7 becomes negative 13. Subtract 8t to both sides because that is the smallest of the variable terms. So I subtract 8t. On the left hand side, you have 4t minus 13 is greater than 3. Add 13 to both sides because I'm trying to get the variable on one side, the constants on the other side. 4t is greater than or equal to 16. Divide 4 to both sides. T is greater than 4 after I simplified. Notice that the solution set is t. T is greater than or equal to number 4. So it is a closed circle on the number 4 and it goes all the way to the right because t is greater than or equal to 4. So 5, 6, 7, 8 and so forth would make it valid. I would like you to do now is the guided practice. Solve each inequality, then graph the solution on a number line, 4a and 4b. Please pause the video if you would like to take some time to try and attempt the problem. We have the first problem here. The original equation is 6 parentheses 5z minus 3 close the parentheses is less than 36z. Use the distributive property, so I'm distributing the 6 inside the parentheses to each term. 6 times 5z is 30z. 6 times negative 3 is negative 18. This is what happens to the left-hand side after I use the distributive property. I have to subtract 30z to both sides because it is the smallest of the variable terms. On my left-hand side, I get, it should be a negative 18. This is off. This should be a negative 18 is less than or equal to 6z. Divide by 6 to both sides. You should get 3 is less than or equal to z. But remember, this should be a minus. This should be a minus here. Okay? So this should be negative 3 is less than or equal to z. So my solution set is z. Z is greater than or equal to -3. This should be a -3. Again, this should be a -3, but it's still going to the right. Sorry about that. Next problem. 2 parentheses h plus 6 close the parentheses is less than or equal to -3 parentheses 8 minus h close the parentheses. That is my original equation. Using the distributive property on the left hand side, you can do the distributive property in one step, but I would like to show it in different steps so I don't lose any student. 2 times on the left hand side, 2 times h is 2h, 2 times 6 is 12. That is the distributive property on the left hand side. Nothing happens to the right hand side. Then you do the distributive property on the right hand side. -3h, -3 times 8 is -16. -3 times -h is a positive 3h. Subtract 2h to both sides, because that is the smallest of your variable terms. You get 12 on the left-hand side is less than or equal to -16 plus h. Plus 16 to both sides, because you're trying to get the variable alone on one side and the constants over on the left-hand side. Simplified, 12 plus 16 is 28, which is going to be less than or equal to 2h. So my solution set here would be h. H is greater than or equal to 28. There you go. That's what happened after I graph it. It's a closed circle on number 28, and it's going all the way to the right. There you go.